I'll go ahead and like just introduce at least what we're going to talk about today. And before we jump in, this is the Local Logic Masterclass. My disclaimer is always that this is not meant to be an infomercial. Certainly, we like it when clients jump on, but this is not meant to be a promotion of our service. We're proud that clients participate in this, but that is not the goal of this. The topic for this one is it's really so you can learn and we can really tackle tough topics. Sometimes has nothing to do with what we do. I really love hosting it. I appreciate you all joining. I think we're starting to get a regular audience, and I appreciate that. This title for this week or this month is How Brokers Can Cut Costs and Grow Their Brand in a Tight Market. I'm super excited about this. We did a prep call the Friday, and there was so much to talk about. And I really believe we have the right people on the call, so that's nice. I am the Vice President of Strategic Partnerships with Sales at Local Logic. We have Chad Oschner, who is the broker owner of Remax Alliance, which I believe is actually, if memory still serves, is like the largest sort of independent or franchise within the Remax US land, right? Is that still true?
No, we are like number 5.
Okay, but pretty damn big. uh, and then we have Sotheby's Canada. We have Rob Love, who I've worked with for a long time. I've worked with everybody here a long time, who's the Director of Marketing Technology at Sotheby's International Realty Canada. And Mike Phelan, who is the Vice President of Marketing and Tech and Consulting at T3, but also acting CTO of Century 21 Canada. So I think we have the appropriate audience here to be really tackling this topic. So let's jump in. So first and foremost, when I was thinking about this topic, and actually this we were supposed to have, and I'm sorry that she isn't able to join us, Wendy Iglesias of Kai's, because she and I really dreamed up this topic together, but she had a last minute conflict happen, so it's okay. But when she and I were first talking about this, we were talking about how some brokers like, Local Logic is doing pretty well with brokers, which is nice. And how brokers decide, what to spend money on, in effect, and what to cut. That's really what this is all about. And we understand this might be sort of a smaller, more targeted audience, but that doesn't make it any less of an important topic, right? So the first question really out of the gate is, what are the most effective methods for reallocating marketing budget to maximize ROI? Without compromising brand value. Because it really just got into my head. Why some things and not others? I'm grateful that we're the some things, and sometimes we're the not the some things. So what makes, it's just honest, so what goes into that decision making? As I said, this is the right panel, so I'll let Rob tackle it first.
Yeah, certainly. And there's a lot of different ways to answer this question, obviously. But I think for us, at least, we have a fairly substantial national marketing team that supports our agents nationwide. And so one of our obviously important strategies we have is not just sort of looking at what we can invest in on behalf of the company, but looking for opportunities where we can engage in kind of co-sponsored marketing content with the agents that we service. Because we have such a on-the-ground marketing team supporting all our agents nationwide, one of the things that we try to do, at least, is we try to find and identify different marketing opportunities that for any individual agent would not scale well, would not be a smart use of their budget. But when you group together 10 or 15 or 20 or even 30 agents with the support of our national marketing team, they make a lot more sense. And for us, this is much more cost effective because it's mostly people power we're investing, of course, some monetary stuff, but it's really actually the combined pool of the agent investment that is basically pushing this so far ahead. And so from the perspective of our side, it's actually a relatively low cost on our side. However, the agents get a huge amount of value by participating in something a lot of other agents are able to sort of pool into, as well as getting the support of our national marketing team as well. So initiatives like that are very promising for us, especially when we're looking to be a bit more lean.
Okay, we'll get into that part a little bit later, but I think that's an important one for sure. And we'll kind of, just so people know, we'll kind of dig into this idea of co-oping in a few minutes. But let me go around a little bit on that topic. Chad?
So what I wanted to add on this one, as a broker owner, we're constantly looking at our vendor partnerships and our spend for tech and marketing. And in years prior, during, some better years, we throw things against the wall, we provide the tool for everybody, and we seem to be okay. When it comes to years like this, you're having to look at how many people are really using it. So when we dig deeper and find out from our brokers and our agents, how many of you are actually using this tool, it's always frustrating because you think it's the best thing and only, less than 20% are actually using it on a day-to-day or monthly basis or at all. So one of the things that we are focusing on is not eliminating those tools and services, but maybe providing more like an a la carte menu. So we call them maybe our deluxe users or our enterprise users. So we're providing a suite of marketing and tech tools for them, but those agents that are actually going to use it and be invested in it, we're going to ask for some payback for that. And they're going to be partnering with us for those tools. It's better than eliminating the product and tool from those 20-30% that are using it. And then from the company standpoint, it's making it a lot more equitable on our spend.
I just had a conversation last week with a very large MLS at CMLS about doing that actually with us, that they would both have some levels of our products on premium and some for, you know what I mean? To your point, I thought it was great. I really liked it. And it wasn't even the premium wasn't that bad. So to your point, it's all goes to the 80-20 rule, right? Mike, I think this kind of goes to you in terms of usage. One of the things you brought up on Friday was about focus and usage, and does that go to training, and how do you stay focused on, where you spend your money and what bang you get for your buck? Because I know you not only do that for C21.ca, but you also do it as a consultant.
Yeah, I mean, we track it very carefully. When and I can speak more from the broker doing the consulting side. One of the first things we get often is the brokerage calls us and be like, "Hey, we're trying to cut expenses. What do we do, and how do we decide how to do it?" And one of the things that we know for sure is there's been a ton of SaaS sprawl. Over the time period that Chad mentioned, right? We've seen the number of tools in a brokerage blossom from 12 or so, around a dozen, to almost 24 now. So one of the first things we do is we look at adoption, right? We're like, well, which tools are your agents using? And then also negotiating potentially sometimes with vendors, right? Around adoption, being like, hey, I don't need to buy, and we've done this at C21. I don't need to buy 14,000 licenses if I only have 6,000 or 7,000 people using. So let's talk about that. And then bringing in the premium option too. We've done that in a few different brokerages. We'll have a base level that, is provided by the brokerage or by the franchise network. And then the next level, the agents opt up into that. And what we find is that they get a lot more buy-in when the agent's got some skin in the game. And I think as we coach brokerages, that's one of the things I think that's changing, is you don't have to give them all the tools for free. Even if you're a traditional brokerage with that you provide a high level of support, there's some structure there. And so that's really what we're doing. And I think the thing that's letting that happen, I'll just mention this, I don't think it's by accident. I don't think we were all stupid before and we just figured it out, is that the tools have become so much more focused on interoperability, right? So I think the tools are better at working together than they've ever been before. So you can have multiple solutions in an individual tech stack.
I'll give you a phenomenal example of that, not to keep harkening back to the MLS side, but it's just for relevance, as brokers are members of MLSs and vice versa. The MLSs are aggressively moving to system of choice. And like one of the deals I have going right now, the contracts are actually segmented by usage. So as opposed to because some systems get more usage than others, but they want for brokers to have the ability to choose. And so I will tell you that the MLS side is moving very aggressively towards that. So that's cool. All right, so maybe this goes into reallocating staffing, right, too. And so I think as we look at moving into premium levels and tracking usage, does this affect staffing? So I'll let you tackle that.
Yeah, for sure.
And staffing could mean anything, right? It could mean like an E team. It could mean, is the industry, unfortunately, I believe everybody on this call is old enough to have been through a down market before. If I haven't, feel free to virtually smack me. But I certainly have been through a few. I know it's a shocker, but I've been through a few. And the market sloughs off, and there are people who believe that the slough off is healthy for the brokers and agents. So if you can kind of talk about recruiting, administrative, E teams, how does
Yeah, for
you know?
sure. I mean, I think it's really important that you have the right agents for sure. Like we're quite deliberate in what we do and how we bring people into the brand, obviously.
Sotheby's is notorious for that.
Yeah, and it's not for everyone, and that's quite frankly the way that we want it to be. We really want agents to work with us and to work with us on the technology and the tools, and we are willing to put in the time and effort in order for them to get to value. Because a lot of the time, the biggest hurdle for adoption is typically time to value, right? It's that sort of gap between where the agent is now and how much time and effort it takes them to start actually getting value back from whatever application they're choosing to adopt. And so I think having actual people on the ground supporting the agent is a big part of our strategy as well. And so it's also it's not just kind of task oriented either, right? We want to also provide a level of service across the board. And this means intimately knowing all of the pieces of technology that we are going to support as a brand. And so we take a lot of time in curating our tech stack and picking the solutions that are compatible. And part of that is that interoperability principle as well. We want to pick tools that are going to work well with other tools so that agents can, to some degree, do a little bit of plug and play with the solutions they have. This makes it much more cost effective for them. And for us, it means our staff doesn't have to be trained on a million different things. We can train them on our core tech stack and really have the agents lean into that. And anything that's sort of outside of that purview, we obviously don't support, because that's going to be a missed opportunity in other ways. So if we try to support a new solution, that's coming at the cost of something else. And so we're really quite diligent in what we choose to support as well.
Okay, so I'm hearing a couple of themes, and I want to go to Chad, which is one, we're being more careful about that we don't throw a million tools at. Number two, we're curating maybe some tools towards the actual to agents that are more productive than others. I didn't really hear you answer whether or not you're continuing to aggressively recruit, because there is an in-house cost, right, to an agent that's just, I don't really sit at a desk anymore. Maybe that's what I mean, nobody's, you don't have to have the big room with the bullpen anymore. So I don't know, what are you thinking? I mean, Remax is a pretty aggressive recruiting machine. So what are your feelings on that, Chad, in terms of cutting costs of recruiting?
So starting with staffing, we centralize where we can. So recently we
That's a good
centralized
point.
our closing department. We don't need to have, contract managers in every branch. That
Right.
saves some money. We continue being a larger footprint company. We'll regionalize where we can. So regionalizing, the marketing, the IT teams. Right now, we're not backfilling any positions. Anyone that is leaving us from a staffing standpoint, we're doing our best to reallocate their job description and duties to other people. Hopefully that's just a temporary move. And then, again, just reallocating duties. As an example, we're making some change in our relocation department. One of our relocation employees, she does rental tours, which are really hot right now. Relocation, not so good right now. Rental tours are very busy. I don't need a full-blown relocation person to be coordinating rental tours. I could easily have a very qualified staff person handling that function. So some reallocation of some duties. Your recruiting question, now's a great time to be recruiting.
Right. All right.
I love, I bleed Remax. I'm proud of Remax. Remax grows in these market conditions as people are looking at their high splits, and Remax typically is drawing some good producers who like our model during these down times. So we're actively recruiting very aggressively. We can come back and talk about how that fits into maybe some mergers and acquisitions, because there's clearly time for that too right now.
That's where I'm headed next. So I'll go to Mike on that, because actually, and no, these aren't meant as, as a plug for T3 either, but you guys do have an M&A division that I think is a bit new. It's being run by my old partner in crime, Prem. So for M&A on the T3 as a consulting, particularly, what are you seeing in terms of M&A? Because Chad bring this up and I thought it was super interesting, and I'll kick it back to him in a minute, but that it is an opportunity to pick up some of like the way you put it, Friday Chat, is these smaller, maybe people who are like, you know what, this is one too many up and down cycle. I'm tired. I don't want to do it anymore. I'm good. I've ridden the roller coaster enough. It's time to go to Boca. So, what do you think, Mike?
Yeah, so T3 does absolutely do M&A. I don't directly involved in that, but where we have been involved in on the technology team specifically is, the costs and the level of sophistication these days to run a brokerage has dramatically changed. I don't think I need to tell anybody that the margins have gotten compressed, and it's making some people question whether it's worth it if when they look at what they need to do to run a successful brokerage. So they're increasingly consolidating into larger brokerages. I mean, you're seeing that some of the very large entities that we see doing lots of consolidation, a lot of the times they're consolidating is for those back end efficiencies that we were just talking about, right? Accounting systems, transaction management systems, relocation systems. I mean, they're consolidating to get the sophistication that can only come from having a large organization. So I think that's the reason why. And I think the thing for smaller firms, though, is there's still a place for them. And whenever you hear that, you're like, can a small firm make it? I think they can. They just have to be laser focused on what they do.
Super niche, it could be,
what their tech stack is, who they serve, who their agents are, and then I think they can be quite successful. But so on the merger and acquisitions, I think there's a lot of firms out there who just decided they can't scale up the way they need with their systems, and that's what's driving a lot of them.
And in truth, sometimes those niche firms, whether they're lakefront or luxury or whatever, right, golf course, sometimes they do get absorbed and they don't function as well, to be honest, because the larger organization can't really meet those niche needs, and they're better off being that 3-person sitting in Hilton Head office on the golf course. Rob, I'll pass it to you for commentary on this if you have any, or I'll kick you a question.
Yeah, I mean, certainly that's one of the easiest ways to grow a brokerage, and obviously you need to be really selective with who you choose to bring into the fold, because there can be a lot of things under the covers that are not ideal, and then you also need to make sure that everyone's a fit sort of for your brand culturally as well. They have the right attitude and they have the right mentality. So certainly it's definitely a way that you can save costs for sure, but I don't deal a lot in that, so I probably won't add too much more context there.
All right. Well, I'll go into lead gen because that was a hot topic from Friday's conversation, and talk a little bit about lead gen and sort of where our heads are. And you guys, but all of you kind of consistently mentioned that maybe offloading demand gen or lead gen, or sort of evaluating a little more than what we've talked about already, which is stay focused and look at usage and blah, blah, all of that's good. Can we really get in the weeds a little bit about lead gen and what you're keeping, what's going, how you're looking at it from a big picture, a macro and a micro perspective? Who wants to jump in first?
I can add something to that one. There's a trend that we actually talk about quite a bit in the tech guide that's just coming out right now. And that some brokerages are outsourcing all that, right? It's actually it's related to the last question. If they decide that they can't do it internally and they don't want to merge into somebody who has it, they're outsourcing all the demand and lead gen, which is really a fascinating concept for me when you think about the services that brokerages have traditionally provided. So I think that's one of the interesting things that's happened is they're like, you know what, let's let somebody else do this. And then what they pass back to the brokerage is, a ready-made business opportunity, like almost like a broker to broker referral. But it's got that kind of a conversion rate for a referral fee, you know what I mean? And so that's an interesting concept that we're seeing some brokerages shed all of that tech, all of those jobs, and just letting somebody else handle it.
Yeah. And by the way, let me add in this before I go to Chad on this, on lead gen and demand gen, is if you guys have questions during, we'll take questions at the end. So please feel free to type them in now. So I know if you have one or start a conversation, happy to reflect that. Robert, Chad, do you want to chime in on lead gen?
Yeah, Chad, I'm happy to jump in. Lead gen, that's definitely my bag. So we are not at present. That's not currently part of our strategy. We invest a lot in generating high quality leads for our agents. But I will say, that, you know, one of the sort of often overlooked things with lead gen is the qualification process, right? Because you can have the same pool of leads as another brokerage, but if you're more efficient, have cleaner technology, and are better able to convert that pool of leads into actual qualified opportunities, then, you know, you're better off spending some of your resources not on actual lead gen, but on sort of lead nurturing and really working those leads harder. Because at the end of the day, if you have 1,000 leads and you're increasing your conversion by you know, double, which is not that difficult to do if you're sitting at 1 or 2%, then at the end of the day, you know, that investment to generate 1,000 additional leads is probably going to be much more than potentially the investment to make your agents better at qualifying those leads, or even centralizing the lead qualification process for your agents, so that,
Yeah.
you know, they have a bit more skin in the game at the end of the day in terms of what they pay out, but they also get a fully fledged qualified opportunity that is ready, willing, and able to transact. Because often
Well,
that's a big challenge for agents, right?
yeah, and in fact, before I go to Chad, that if you don't do it, will the Opsities of the world or the Zillows do it for you? You know, relatively. And so is it, you know, isn't it better that it's coming from you, right? And Chad, I'll let you kind of tackle that one.
So I look at it from kind of a tiered standpoint. You know, we start with, you know, the Zillows of the world, which I know as a broker owner in Colorado, I'm not going to compete with. So I will support our brokers that want to subscribe and be a part of the Zillow team. That's great for them. But from as a brand and a company standpoint, we no longer are in that space. Our brand, we rely on a lot of it from Remax. You know, they generate some leads from their national site. And then they've got some very good, you know, great tools that really go down and drill down into your database. First IO is awesome. We really promote that, so that's something that our folks are leveraging to generate leads within their own database. And then the last thing, this is your prop here, Audrey. We can't compete with Zillow in Colorado, but I can use tools like Local Logic to boost up my own company's website, and we're generating local leads, very granular local leads, not the big macro Zillow stuff, but thanks to partnering with people like that, because people are wanting
Thank you. That was very organic. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Checks in the mail.
Yeah. Well, you know, look, I mean, that is our pitch, right? Our pitch is that, you know, it's funny, at the end of the day, long before I started doing any of this, you know, I'll never forget, my sister was looking for a beach house, and we was in Rehoboth, and she was looking at sites, and I was curious. This is, I think, when I was in the early stages, maybe at RDC or at Red, and I was curious what site she picked and why. You know, and at the end of the day, as just a generic consumer looking for a property, she picked the local expert. She picked the site that she felt had local expertise and understood what she was buying and where. And that is the point. And I do think Local Logic is doing well. And this is honest to God, hand to God objective, because we live where we work and we work where we live now. And so it not only was important then, but let's face it, it's triply important now. But we do not have to go down the pro Local Logic wheelhouse. Everybody here is a client, and I appreciate it. And certainly we're happy to be part of what's making the cut for the budgets. I'll go back to something else. I know, see, Chad, I try and keep it entertaining, which is let's go back to the co-oping thing about agents being mutually invested, and not because Local Logic is also coming out with a tool that's similar to that, that'll be nice for brokers and MLSs, but generally because you guys brought this up the other day, and it really intrigued me as to giving examples of when you launch things where you're become like mutually invested in the technology with your agents. It's not only you're not absorbing all the costs, but it's better for them. The question is why, and how is that happening? Who's got it? Who wants to go first? Chad, you brought it up, I think, first. So no, maybe Rob said it first.
I'll talk about the how it's happening.
Okay, good.
I think one of the really great things is they become your sales team. They become your training team. So if you've got agents in an office that love a tool, they're like, I love it so much, you take it away, I'll pay for it. okay, well, you can pay for part of it, we'll subsidize part of it, but you know what? We need your help spreading the word, because the more licensees, the more people that are using the product, your price could go down, the company could save money. And right now, we just maybe don't have the bandwidth to be teaching these classes. So if you have a raving fan that loves the product, there's your trainer.
Yeah, because trainers are expensive. I just went through this with an MLS. Again, you can tell I've been in their world a lot lately. They're top of mind. But one of the things we were talking about with this large MLS is they're like, oh, we have 5 trainers on staff. So they're like, we at 5 trainers for, yeah, a big MLS, but it was not the biggest. I thought it was pretty impressive. They are, in other words, we're not buying it if we can't train on it. So what about you, Rob?
Yeah, so I have a different perspective. I mean, I completely understand it. Previous to this role, I worked for a company that supported Remax around the world. And so Remax is a very lean operation, and a lot of reps are very entrepreneurial. And I could see that being a nice fit for the culture and everything. But for us, people come to our brand with the expectation of working for a full service brokerage, right? And so we are very selective in the solutions we choose to adopt, and we typically provide those to the agents at no cost. But as I mentioned before, a part of this has to do with just the amazing support we have from this national marketing team, which is quite large and obviously a fairly expensive investment for us to maintain. And so we have a slightly different position. It's really revolves around really supporting the agents in what they want to do using our technology. And we do create a lot of raving fans still. I am also a fan of having people have some skin in the game, because I do feel that if you are going to support a technology, you need to invest time, you need to invest resources, and there is a little bit of a barrier, I'd say, for something that's free in real estate, and this has always been the case, right?
Do not get me started on that topic.
This is the reason why I have seen many freemium models crash and burn so many times, because the reality is, if the agents don't have a little bit of skin in the game, it's going to be a lot harder for you to get them to adopt a solution, because they don't perceive the same value that you do. And so we spend a lot of time curating, again, our tech stack so that we only have solutions that we know are going to be effective for agents, and that we know our local teams can support the agents on. And that's really where our wheelhouse is. I don't see us pivoting to that other model, but again, that's really just a cultural difference between different kinds of brands. People expect when they work to Sotheby's to be very to have a lot of marketing support and services around them, and we have a local team that really specializes in that.
Well, 2 comments on that. One, in the freemium model, if you don't value it, the consumer will not, and I don't care who your consumer is.
True.
2, Remax and Sotheby's probably couldn't get more diametrically different. We definitely have a little bit of the extremes here. And thank God there are a number of brokerages and franchises out there that all have sort of different mission statements and cultures, and there are enough agents out there to fuel all of it. So I'll take the Switzerland approach there. Mike, from a consulting standpoint, with your consulting hat, and please don't jump in as C21, although they might be right in the middle, what is, from a consulting standpoint, what are you seeing in terms of all the different brokerages you talk to in terms of co-oping solutions? And is it about culture? Or is it, they're clearly both doing it. They're taking slightly different sort of methodology towards it, but they're both doing it.
This is my favorite thing about doing what I do, and is I get to see all these different
Right,
models.
exactly. That's why you're on, man. You were my first request.
Yeah, they all do it differently, and I just fascinated by that. So, I do think it entirely depends on the culture, the business model, the resources the organization has. At T3, we use what we call a brokerage technology profile, and it's got 10 continuums, and we have brokers answer a series of questions every time we start to work with them. So we'd be like, tell us about yourself. And it basically creates a thumbprint for the brokerage, so that on the technology side, then we can start to make recommendations that make sense. Because, you guys will all laugh, but like the very first question I get asked, no matter where or when, is like, what's the best CRM? I mean, it's like just such a standard joke. And you're like, well, I don't know anything about you, so I couldn't possibly tell you what the right CRM is.
Right.
But we ask those questions, right? And then we get there. So, I mean, it's interesting to hear both of the perspectives right here say, you know, they got one for co-op and one for, I've seen both work. I've seen brokerage is another trend that we're seeing is brokerage is pulling back on, and I don't want everybody to think, I think everybody's just shedding all their tech. That's not what's happened. I'm just trying to give you some examples. We just talked to one brokerage, 1,500 agents, 250 were full-time, right? So, I mean, you can already kind of picture what's going on there. And when I say that, meaning, so they're trying to support, and it's 100% model, right? So they had to really rethink their tech stack, and they really decided to focus on everything essentially in the back office, right? Which the agents have some interaction with in terms of submitting transactions, but risk compliance, transaction management, and they let the agents take over the front, right? So I think that's another way of looking at co-op. We're like, we're going to do an amazing bang up job on the back end and really making all the processing and coordination of that piece really seamless for the agent. But agents, you're responsible for your websites, your lead gen, your demand gen, you do all that stuff. And then, you know, once it comes into the system as a contract, then we're going to take that over for you. So I think that's just another way to do the co-op is just.
Yeah, I think that's a tough model. I'm not gonna lie. There's a part of me that's like, oh, you're gonna shed some people. But maybe you want to shed them. You know what I mean? Maybe the reality of it is you're fine getting rid of the agents that do 5 to 10 a month, right? Or 5 to 10 a year, excuse me. No, you don't want the 5 to 10 a month. But that's an interesting question. And I do think it's fair to talk about the fact that this whole conversation is not about shedding tech. It's about making more qualified decisions, both on the front and the back end. I think that's a fair comment. I personally think it's wrong to get rid of everything on the front end, but that's my own bias. I think there's balance. I think you have to be really careful, and I think it is about balance. I think it's about spending wisely, period. But one of the other thing we've all talked about is training, making sure that you get usage and adoption. Let me ask you guys a question. How do you know where you're getting usage and adoption? What tools are you using? Are you spending money on those tools? And those tools, in a sense, have to have their own ROI. As we continue to circle the drain on that one. So, what's the thought on there, Rob? Oh, go ahead, Mike.
No. Have Rob go, and then I'll dip it.
Okay.
Yeah, well, prior to Sotheby's, it was I think 17 years in prop tech and CRM, and I remember working back at Top Producer back in the day, and 80% of our users basically used it as a fancy Rolodex, right? It's $40 a month.
Hey, that company made a lot of money as a fancy Rolodex. And it was the only Rolodex anybody used for a really long time.
It did, but it's one of those things that was a fairly straightforward kind of proposition, right? Because the agents would start using it, and they would just use it at a very surface level. And here we are, we're developing features and functions and tools and automations and all this great stuff. And the very small percentage of users are actually using it. And so I think you need to have that conversation with a vendor right away, right? Whenever you're talking about adoption, you need to talk about, what the average adoption is, how they measure adoptions. Do they have scorecards? Will you be having conversations with your account manager if that plan kind of gets off track? Make your vendor commit to the adoption. Make them put the money where their mouth is, right? Because they're going to talk you in the sales process. They're going to talk your head off about how they have the best adoption. They can get so many people to adopt. Tie that into some things. If you really want to sign a deal with this company, say, okay, this is great, but if we don't hit this adoption number by a year into our plan, what are you going to do for us?
As long as the broker does what they're supposed to do, also.
Right.
I mean, it's a marriage, my friend. I will say that in defense of the vendor. I'll turn it to Chad before Mike chimes in.
I think always engaging the vendors. So I always want to see reports from them, and I want to see more than just like logins. Anyone can produce me a login report. I want to see actual engagement, activity, time spent, content created, or whatever it may be. We'll do some surveys. We need to be better about that because, you're only going to get so many back, and everyone's going to say, oh, I love it all. But we may not know for sure if they're really using it. Anytime you can track like ROI. So some of our products, some of our tools, we will take a split, like some of the lead gen stuff. That's easy to track. And then the best one is just asking the questions. So going to sales meetings or having the managing broker
right.
or myself say, hey, gang, be transparent. This contract's coming up for renewal. We know some of you love it. We know some of you probably know nothing about it. We know some of you know about it and aren't using it. Please give us some feedback. Is it something we should continue? If you know about it, but you're not using it, is it because of training? Do we need to bring somebody in here to teach you about it? Is this something that would excite you and would help you in your business? So I think the best bet is just be transparent and ask them.
And it's also like, which ones are using it? Let's face it, we go back to the 80-20 rule. So if you have two top agents that are invested in a technology, right, that are producing 10% of your business, or two teams, and the other 80% don't know anything about it, it's still worth it. I mean, that is just the reality, right? Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, and I don't. These are all great points. I don't have that much to add, but the one thing I would say is that brokerages, depending on the size of the organization and the diversity, they tend to think about their agents in a monolithic way. Like they think all the agents are the exact same way, and they do the business the same way. Therefore, they're all going to use the tech stack the same way. So what we try to get brokerages to do is like identify what types of agent personas you have, because depending on where they are in their career, the way they like to generate business, that kind of thing, that will determine which tools they gravitate to. So we actually do a thing. You should never expect 100% adoption of a tool. If you have 20-30% and it's the right 20-30% of your agents, that very well could be 100% adoption. So just getting much more deliberate with it, I mean, and thinking about it a lot more holistically is part of what we're doing there to try to measure that.
I do think it's all about asking. Anecdotally, when we were running List Hub, and the industry List Hub was kind of, syndication was like the hot topic at the time, right? And what happened is the industry kind of came firing back and decided to point its lens at syndication. And so all the MLSs were like, and the brokers were like, you're taking people away from my site. And suffice to say, we ended up starting this program called Wise Advertise, that ended up eventually getting picked up as like a CRE course. Long story short, what really happened is that the MLSs had certain viewpoints that frankly were politically fueled. And I'm not saying they weren't wrong and there weren't nuances of being right and wrong, but eventually when they went out to their brokerage community and actually polled their community as to whether or not they wanted syndication and they wanted to go to the top sites and what was important to them, uniformly 80-90% were like, please do not stop what you're doing. And I literally dealt with this with an MLS last week. They were like, oh, well, you know what? These sites are done. I'm like, look, I don't work there anymore. But I said, I strongly suggest that before you make a decision that is based on your personal opinion and your viewpoint, that you talk to your members. I said, because you might be surprised. And if you turn it off, turn it off. You know what I mean? She's like, oh, that's a good idea. So I do think this is about like what Chad said, which is really being close to your agents, your membership, because they are a member, right? Very similar to an MLS, really. And let me ask you then another question. And this will probably be my final one. If we please again open up to questions, but this did not come up in the prep, and I do love a good curveball. So I'm notorious for throwing one, so I'm going to do it. Which really means just shit comes up in my head while we're talking. So here's forgive my language, but this is about the MLS and the role it plays in its tools. I should have brought this up on Friday, right? We should have come up with this, guys. But what role is when there's overlap? Like
Yeah.
I know, right? I don't even need to complete the sentence. How does that factor into your decision making versus what you're supplying versus what the MLS is supplying? And you really vary with this. I got introduced to a large MLS by one of my very top broker clients, and the MLS is like, well, does the broker mind that we're going to do this? Because the broker's already a client. And I said, well, the broker made the introduction, so I think you should take that as a no. But this is a question that's a very common question, and I happen to be with a few that walks in both worlds. So please, let's finish it on a nice high moment. Thoughts, Chad? I can tell. I feel like you have something you want to say there. You look like it's like right here. Am I right or wrong?
Yeah, of course. You're right. You're right. I think forever it has been a point of contention on who's going to provide what for the broker. At what point is the brokerage now competing with the MLS to provide tools and services? I feel like those days are waning.
I agree.
And fortunately, and to everybody on this call, make sure that you're involved as a broker owner or manager in your MLS.
Yeah.
I love so many of my brokers who are serving on the boards of MLSs coming from an association and a realtor standpoint. But we need actual broker owners serving and representing on the MLS boards. So fortunately, I've had the luxury of being on ours for many years. I'm retired, but we've got a broker owner, Remax broker owner, who's the chair of our current MLS, Ari, Colorado. They just won an Innovator Award.
Great guy.
Really, really huge. So over the past couple of years, having that broker ownership standpoint operate in MLS, he has said to the broker owners in the region, what tools do you need us to provide? Where do you need us to stay out? And so one of the things that has been really huge for us in leveraging the power of the MLS, they're now funding the showing software in Metro Denver as a member benefit. That saved me a ton of money. They're now partnering with SkySlope, happens to be SkySlope. We were a SkySlope client ahead of time, so that's saving me some money. Yes, they're just providing the basics and I have to pay a little bit more for the stuff that we're using, but I'm really grateful for progressive MLSs who are saying, hey, here's a common thing that our brokerages are using. We've got some reserves, we got some cash, we can make the investment, make these things member benefits. And really, we're partnering now with our broker owners in saving some costs moving forward. So I'm glad you put it up. And I think if you're not involved in your MLS from a broker owner standpoint,
that's on you.
Get on the board, and direct them to treat the MLS as like a business. It's
100%. I just finished a demo an hour ago with a broker that inbounded. I'm like, I don't know why I'm on the phone. He's like, I don't know why I'm on the phone. He said, honestly, CRMLS just launched you guys. And he said, and I'm on their board. And he's like, I really wanted to understand your relationship with them. And he said, so I decided to go to the horse's mouth, and we had a great conversation. And I applauded him for doing it. Sorry, go ahead, Rob.
No, it's great. This is a particularly tough one for me because we're
you can abstain. You can.
Yeah, we're a national brokerage, right? And so we don't have the luxury of tools that are the same at every MLS stop, and so we can either support those tools in each of those regions separately and differently, which is cost prohibitive for us. It's just too complex. And this is the route that I certainly prefer, especially with the marketing support we have. We invest in technology that allows us all to push the flywheel in the same direction. And what I mean by that is we invest in a technology where we know when a lead comes from the website, we have a marketing plan set up on the agent's behalf that it can automatically get kicked into. It's the best of the best that our brand has to offer, and we know it converts. And we have a place where we can put all our marketing templates into, all of the templates they can send via newsletters, for print, whatever it happens to be. We want to invest in technology where we can centralize a lot of that, because we are creating, probably hundreds of templates every single month for our agents to leverage and use. And so we need a vehicle to deliver those. Every time we have agents that are using sort of the MLS pieces and then some of our technology, it is always very challenging for us and also for them, because they need to find a way to get our stuff into whatever proprietary system they're using.
Back to that interoperability.
Yes. And the last thing I'll say on this is just that I would love for all of our agents to have the same set of tools through the MLS, because that would make my life so much easier.
Well, let's not talk about Canada, shall we? I'm going to immediately segue over to Mike, which is its own animal, very different than the US. And so it's taken me a long time to learn it and understand it. So Mike, you get to be our final word. I suspect this comes up in your consulting. So how do you handle it?
This is a tricky one. I was smiling. It's a great question, and it's a thorny one in the industry. And I really think it goes back to who the brokerage again. I mean, it depends on who that broker is, what their value prop is, and how they're going to perceive. In my past life, I think I've worked in brokerage for 20 years. And so prior to being in the consulting side, so I did not appreciate it when I competed against the MLS. I was responsible for equipping our agents from a marketing and technology standpoint, and I didn't like it when they would effectively level the playing field. but that was my position, right? I mean, I worked for a leading brokerage that had a large marketing and technology spend, and it was that. So if I could add my T3 piece of this would be focus on the things that are commodities, right? That every agent needs, regardless of where the brand they affiliate with. That to me, is where MLS should focus, and then allow the brands to kind of differentiate themselves with whatever their value proposition is. So if I had to come at it from that perspective, that's where I would say.
But I agree with Chad. And then we have a really great question that just came in. So then we'll tie things up. But I'm sorry, I am going to agree with Chad though that I think that it is not as much of an issue of the MLS versus the broker as it used to be. And I play in all 25 years of playing in all sides and pretty objective. And I do see it being less antagonistic and less of an issue. I feel like both communities have bigger fish to fry, is maybe a better way to put it. This is not, look, when the market is really, maybe it's a difference of a strong market versus a tight market, right? In a tight market, you've got to really, you better be focusing on what matters. And look, and one last thing that none of us have said is that there's a lot of money to be made on mortgage and title and things like that too. So, which is not terribly competitive with your MLS as it stands today. So, we'll leave it at that. Great question, though, what that just came in. When you decide to change an existing offering to the co-op model, any tips to successfully implement this shift so your agents don't feel you are reducing your support? Thank you for that question. I thought it was outstanding. Did you guys hear it? You want me to repeat it?
No, I got it.
Okay.
It goes back to transparency. So you need to, I would have a conversation. If we're re-looking at a vendor platform and it seems like it's not getting traction and I might have some resistance if we take it away, I'm going to reach out to the people that are using it and talk to them. How are you using it? Tell me how it's benefiting your business. Do you think the lack of usage is because we didn't train people enough or that we haven't communicated the product or the value enough? We are seriously looking at getting rid of it. If we kept the product, would you pay for it? What's your threshold for paying for it? Some of the products you could go out on the street and buy. Some of the vendor relationships, you're going to need the brokerage. You're going to need us to contract with them and then to resell to you. But I think it's just transparency and talking to your people about it. What do you use? What do you like? How much would you pay? Here's the predicament we're in. They get it.
Well, like we don't really sell to agents except through IRE. So it's true. Like, I mean, just even for us, you get economies of scale. You wouldn't be really offered otherwise. So, Rob, do you have a comment on this before we kind of close everything out?
Yeah, for sure. I think that probably really important to getting buy-in from any co-op model, as mentioned, was transparency, obviously, but also helping them understand what you are contributing to this whole process as well. And I would say part of our model is also telling the agents relentlessly about them and communicating that value all the time. And whenever there's a success that comes from a co-op, whenever there's a story that you can take out, pull that right out right away and share it with everyone. Because it's one thing when you as the brokerage tell an agent, hey, this is great, you should participate. It's another thing when an agent says, hey, I just got a listing because of this co-op that I did last week. That is, you need to hone in on those success stories and really use them to sort of sell the program as best you can, and over communicate. If your agents don't think you're repeating yourself, you're probably not telling them enough about it.
I don't know if you have anything final to say on that, Mike, but I do think that's a whole nother interesting topic. No, you're good. Is like
I'm good.
Okay, just about communication, which is really, communication, and how you work in sync with your agents. It does seem like the more successful franchise and brokerages are incredibly good, to your point, of calling out success stories, not just sort of bombarding their agents with things they've bought. So what I'm hearing is our common themes are be focused, be communicative, understand sort of the end game here. Don't be afraid to make the tough decisions, but do it in a way that is holistic. And don't be afraid to add too, like now to your point, a lot of vendors are happy to make deals, it's also a good time to pick up technology. It just is. I mean, that's just a reality. So, I mean, I do think that the vendors that are here today that are serving your needs through I will say this is this is not a local logic plug, this is a pro vendor plug, which is that having been on both sides as well, but as a vendor through some tough markets, the vendors that make it through these markets and are there beside you and are still growing and making an understanding of your needs at this time are really the ones that are going to be with you through all kinds of markets. And I do think it's important to identify those partners, honestly, whoever it is. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you, everybody. Everybody stayed on. That was so nice. I'm glad you found it informative. The next one we've decided is going to be about fair housing and AI maybe and things like that. So I'm pretty stoked about the next one. So I expect all the panelists to join as attendees and ask good questions. All right. Thank you, everybody. Happy Tuesday.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.